Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joey Parsons. I'm the engineering manager at Airbnb, engineering manager for site reliability at Airbnb, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about how we do monitoring for both our systems and health. So I'll take you on a little story about a little bit about my life, but first I want to talk about a moment that I had the other night at Pips and Bounce. So while everybody was playing ping pong, I was taking a look at all the attendees around. And I looked at my cell phone, and I was looking at just kind of my home screen. And I was thinking that every single one of these great companies is powered by a lot of the work that goes on by the folks in this room and our friends back at home. There's so much beyond kind of product market fit that goes into these companies, and a lot of it's done by all of the great developers, whether you're writing books, writing code, writing blog posts, all these sorts of things to make these companies really work. I know I personally wouldn't be here and wouldn't have the career that I have today without the efforts of a lot of people in this room. I've learned from every single one of you, so I wanted to say thank you to everybody and give a big round of applause. So one of the other reasons I love Monitorama is because I've absolutely fallen in love with the city of Portland. We actually have a small engineering office here in Portland, as well as our main customer experience office. And one of the really cool things about it is there's a really fucking awesome bear shark in that office. I'm not quite sure what the origins of it or what it means, but if you go into the office and you see a bear shark, it's, nothing can beat that. So this wouldn't be an Airbnb presentation without one of our traditions. One of the things that we always do when we have like a presentation or we're talking in a group setting is we always talk about like a fun fact, something that kind of gets you to know the person that's either like presenting or talking in a group. So the fun fact I want to share with you guys today is that, so I turned 37 years old in about a month and a half, and I just realized I've been on on-call rotations for almost half of my life. That's wild, right? So almost 18 and a half years of my entire life, I've been in on-call rotations. So you must be wondering, like, you're 37, like, what were you doing on an on-call rotation when you were 18? So I'm actually a two-time college dropout. It's one of the reasons why I really thank you guys, because I've learned from all of you. School didn't teach me all this kind of stuff. I learned from everybody here. So I want to kind of take you on a little bit of a journey and talk about how I got here. So after the second time I dropped out of school, I was around 18 years old. My mom pulled open the newspaper. She was like, you need to get a job. She looked in the classified ads, right? This was like 1998. There was no like Craigslist. There was no like Monster.com. Like all these companies didn't really exist. And I ended up getting a tech support job at a small company in San Antonio, Texas, called GlobalScape. So for those of you that don't know GlobalScape was the makers of QtFTP. How many of you guys remember QtFTP? Wow. Okay, so I probably supported you guys during my first 3 months there. And then after that, I became the webmaster. I was responsible for ensuring that the GlobalScape website was always up and available. I did a bunch of HTML stuff. I was really badass at tables. I could turn a PSD into tables really well. But it was interesting because we didn't have like an ops team. There was no SRE team. This wasn't even really kind of like a thing at that point. So they asked me, hey, would you actually carry this pager? Right? Will you carry this pager and resolve issues as they came about? We didn't have a monitoring system. It was basically if somebody noticed that the site was down, either they would notice a support ticket come through saying that they couldn't download QtFTP, and then I would literally get a page on my pager for 911, meaning I had to go do something. I didn't have a cell phone, so I couldn't call somebody and say, what do I do next? I literally had to get in my car, drive to our office. That's where our NOC was. Right? We had like a little area in our office where all of our servers were, and I had to figure out what was going on, reboot it, and then hope everything came back up. You must think like, oh, you were 18 years old. You must have been out doing a lot of really fun things. Nope. Not a lot on the weekend. I lived about a half a mile from the office, and most of the time I had friends over. They'd bring their computers over. We'd have a LAN party, right? It was a lot of fun back then. I spent a lot of time mudding. That's how I originally learned how to code. And one time I actually fixed an issue, and I noticed the tech support phone was ringing, and a guy was having an issue downloading QtFTP. I helped him download QtFTP, and what a lot of you people might not know is you might think that it was mostly used for folks like us that were transferring files back and forth from servers, but it was actually mostly used by people that were sending files up to GeoCities to sell their listings on eBay. And this particular phone call that I picked up was a guy named Billy from Mississippi that had a belt buckle business selling on eBay. So after that, I actually got a job at Rackspace. I was there in the very beginning doing managed hosting. I ran the Linux support teams there, where we were basically the on-call team for all of our customers. They could call, within one ring someone would pick up, and the next thing you know, you could be compiling PHP for them, dealing with some kind of Apache issue, helping them with anything that was happening in their system. After that, I moved on to Sugar CRM, spent some time at Clout, and then spent some time at Flipboard. And lately, I just became an advisor for companies like Ship and RIFC, the makers of the GIF keyboard. Someone mentioned yesterday, or a couple days ago, that they had like a propensity for joining companies whose logos were blue. I seemingly have an issue, or I seemingly like to join companies whose logos are red. You might say Ship's logo is green, but I'm terribly colorblind, and I can tell a long story about how we had a serious outage at Sugar CRM for a long time because I couldn't tell the difference between an amber light and a red light on a switch. So thanks, Cisco. Which brings me to where I am today. I joined Airbnb about 10 months ago. I actually didn't make these slides. We have a really cool team back at the office that creates these amazing things that we can put into presentations. And I joined about 10 months ago at Airbnb and have been building out the SRE team there and figuring out how we do a lot of the stuff that the folks in this room do. So just to kind of talk about where we are in terms of scale and what we're supporting. In 2009, you can see this is a map of the world and all the listings that we have available on Airbnb. So in 2009, you can see we were heavily concentrated, just North America, a few hundred listings out there. And over time, you can kind of see our global scale in 2010, 2011, we're growing all over the world. And then finally, you can see where we're at the end of 2015. So at the end of 2015, we had about 2 million homes available on Airbnb for listings. 34,000 cities, 191 countries. So that's 2 million homes that depend on Airbnb to be up, to be able to be available for folks to be able to come and stay in their listings. And our mission as a company is to help people belong anywhere. We think that with our host community and staying with a host, you can best kind of experience a city or a town or an area and really feel like you're actually living there. So why is monitoring super important at Airbnb? So there's definitely like the online component. You know, you're searching through listings, you're finding where you want to stay, you find the listing that you want to stay at, and then you book it, right? That entire process has to be really solid, really available to be able to power those 2 million listings that we're looking at. But there's also a huge offline component to Airbnb. There's checking in with your host, right? There's all these details that come from like viewing your itinerary, messaging back and forth with your host. And if Airbnb is not available, there can be some serious problems there. So this is actually the listing that I'm staying at here in Portland. It's out in the Alphabet District. It's actually like a Marine Layer is a San Francisco store, clothing store, and I'm staying in the small little loft above that. So if I weren't able to view my itinerary, I might not know how to get into the front door. And if I'm not going to get in the front door, it was really, really hot on Sunday. I didn't want to be sitting outside baking. And let's imagine if I didn't know how to contact my host or message my host to let them know that like the water heater was broken. I might not be able to take a shower for a few days, right? And none even you would want to sit next to me. So how do we go about doing monitoring at Airbnb? We use a few commercial tools to be able to do this. We made a decision early on that we didn't really want to focus too much on building out our entire own time series database, coming up with building a lot of custom dashboards. And a lot of the great tools that a lot of people were talking about weren't around when Airbnb was incepted. So one of the tools that we use is New Relic. So New Relic actually gives us a lot of stuff for free. Simply by including the New Relic gem into our Ruby applications and our JVM applications, we get a wealth of data about how that is actually working. So we can do deep introspection into the different timings down to the controller. It gives us tracebacks, it gives us error rates. We can look at the error rate after we do a deploy to ensure that everything is operating as it should after deploy. And then one of the other big tools that we use is Datadog. So Datadog is our primary time series database for most of the metrics that we collect within the system. So we have the resident agent collector that's simply pulling down metrics from the system, like the typical stuff like CPU, memory. And then we also have instrumented the majority of the application using dog-statsd. And for those of you who aren't familiar with dog-statsd, it's very similar to Etsy's statsd protocol, except that it has an augmentation of being able to add tagging on top of that to be able to drill down and filter on what we're looking at. And then we also use a bunch of integrations. We're 100% on AWS, so we're pulling down information from CloudWatch and bringing that all into Datadog. So one of the ways, the primary way that we do alerts at Airbnb is simply through metrics, right? We don't have a system like Nagios or Sensu that's doing port health checks or pinging systems to ensure that they're live. Everything is based on either those instrumented metrics or metrics that are collected by the system. And we do alerts based on different thresholds or availability of those metrics. So Datadog actually gives you a great user interface to be able to create metrics. It's something it's hard to repeat, but you can go ahead and select a metric, select the tags over the metrics, and then build out the alert through their UI. So at Airbnb, we're very focused on infrastructure as code, right? Everything that we do within our entire infrastructure is code. So when you're looking at this, it's really hard to repeat, and it's really hard to kind of figure out the best way to define your metric. So we came up with an open source project that we call Interferon. So Interferon isn't specific to Datadog, but it's an open source tool where you can basically store your alerts configuration as code. It has, the main configuration for it has host sources. So these are the different things that you can query, like if you have some sort of dictionary of all your services or dictionary of all your hosts, or some sort of queryable data source that gives information about your environment. And for us, we use Optica, which is kind of like our representation of every server in our entire environment and all the metadata about that server that we pull in from both AWS, that we pull in from Chef, and stores all that information. Destinations, our primary destination is Datadog. So this integration was built with Datadog in mind. Groups, so these are how you define particular users and groups or integrations that you want to be able to send alerts to. And then obviously alerts. So these are the alerts that are kind of like the infrastructure as code where you're looking at how the actual alerts define in Ruby. You can check out Interferon by going to airbnb.io and looking at all of our other open source projects, or also going to the direct GitHub link. So let's take a look at a sample alert file from Interferon. So this is actually an alert that's based on our search availability. So if the P95 response time is greater than a particular threshold, it's going to fire. So these particular fields map up almost directly to the Datadog UI that I was showing earlier. But you can see that we do something a little bit unique in the message. So instead of creating runbooks for every single system where you have to look at the alert, understand which runbook to go to, maybe click through on that, we include the actual runbook in the alert. So the first thing, if this alert were to fire, you would go check out the search health dashboard on Datadog. You might want to look at the New Relic dashboard as well for search. And if the CPU load is spiked, you might want to deploy new machines, and there'll be a link directly there to go ahead and begin deploying new machines. And then also, if that's not quite working and you want to decrease the amount of search QPS, we have a kill switch that you can throw on to be able to help reduce the load against our search environment. There's an applies construct where you can use some of the metadata from your dictionary service to be able to figure out which host this apply to. And you can see that this is actually looking at the chef role for search. So this would apply to any machine that matches the chef role of search. The notify groups, this is the group that I was talking about earlier in terms of which group should be notified if search is down. And then down here at the bottom, we have the metric, the Datadog query, and this is the actual representation of the metric in Datadog that we're alerting on, filtered down by the tag of the chef role search, and then with a threshold of what's previously defined. So to take a look at how those groups work, we have integration with PagerDuty, Slack, a bunch of other tools. If you were to use Interferon yourself, you could define your own integration. So for that particular search alert, this would obviously go to the Slack room for the search team, and then it would also go to the PagerDuty rotation for the search team as well. And then at the bottom here, we have like another integration where you can actually send this email. So one of the unique things about Airbnb in terms of on-call is that we don't do things like most teams. So we have individual product teams, they're on call for their own stuff. If you're building your own service, typically if you're building your own service behind our giant monorail, you're pretty much going to be on call for that particular service. But for kind of like general site availability and all of our like core business metrics that we alert on, we actually have a volunteer on call. So 11 months ago, before I was deciding to come to Airbnb, I had a long talk with Mike Curtis, who's our VP of engineering. And I was like, okay, you know, seems cool. I can come in there, do my SRE thing, sounds awesome, but like, how do you guys do on call? And he's like, oh, it's volunteer. And I was like, this is bullshit, right? And it's like, how did people volunteer for this? Like, isn't this like SRE's job? Like, isn't half of our time supposed to be spent like doing reactive things and making sure that the general availability of the site is great? He's like, no. He's like, yeah, SRE is going to be focused on making sure that everybody else can do on-call effectively, including like our volunteer organization. So how did this come to be? So we've never, before I was hired, we never really had an SRE or an ops team. Really early on in the day, we had one person that was on call for everything. And in an engineering meeting, our CTO basically asked, like, hey, does anybody else want to be on call? 4 other engineers rose their hands, and suddenly we had a volunteer on-call organization. And then after that, like there's been a few kind of like interesting things that this group has done. So there was actually like a gong in the office that someone would ring anytime that there was like a site availability problem or something was wrong. And then all the engineers that were part of the sysops team, they would go to this group of standing desks that they called Standyland and resolve on the issues. So folks would come back from lunch, or they'd come in early in the morning and they'd see folks standing around Standyland, and they're like, oh crap, the site's down, and they would ask them for updates. But it was kind of like a unique way of both visually representing, and not just through metrics, that something bad was happening on Airbnb. And then after that, obviously as the engineering organization began to scale and the amount of different services that we have and the complexity of the systems began to scale, it wasn't tenable for just 5 people to be on call. So the next thing we kind of figured out was, how do we get more people to volunteer? How do we get more people on this on-call rotation? And it was actually simpler than we thought. So one thing that we do every quarter or every 2 quarters, depending on how many people want to join the rotation, we actually have like a sysops training. So during boot camp, which is something that every engineer goes through for the first 3 weeks, we teach everybody in the entire company about how to use New Relic, how to use Datadog, how to use our Elk stack, basically all the different monitoring tools that we have, just so that everybody has that base for their particular teams. But sysops training, we go a little bit deeper. We learn how to remediate things. We learn how to be a good citizen on call, how to keep people, how to communicate with customer service, and how to effectively use PagerDuty. And we also have learning sessions where people learn historical incidents and learn about past ways things have broken, so they can kind of build up that compendium of knowledge for how things could potentially break here at Airbnb. The next thing that they do is there's a daily rotation that they get added to. So you'll have your primary and your secondary person on call, and then this daily rotation is someone that's new that's joined sysops will be in parallel with primary, so that as an alert comes through, they can see it, they can understand what's happening, they can jump in the Slack room for the incident, talk about it with the primary, or they could even go sit with them and learn how to do incident management hand in hand with somebody else. And then after that, we kind of throw them into the fire. You're promoted to being on call, and based on all the stuff that you've learned, we hope that you become an effective on-call incident manager. So one thing that we do every Friday afternoon, we have a weekly SysOps meeting. It's actually held in one of our conference rooms. It's called Strangelove. It's based off of the War Room from Dr. Strangelove, and this is an actual picture of the room. It's actually like pretty neat. So in this meeting, we have our SysOps chair, who's not someone from SRE, not somebody from the infrastructure team. It's someone that's really exhibited what it means to be a great SysOps, and it's actually one of our great engineers from our risk team right now. And one of the previous SysOps chairs was actually somebody from our Android team. So one of the beautiful things about SysOps is that you don't have to be on an infrastructure team. You don't even have to be on kind of like a back-end team. You can be anybody in the entire engineering organization, and it's our job to make sure that we can help you be effective. So in this SysOps meeting, we go through kind of like all the incidents that happened within the previous week. We talk about metrics. We do a handoff to the next people that are coming on call, and we also we have the handoff to the people that are coming on call, and we discuss any maintenance that we're going to be doing in the future weeks, so that everybody's informed about all the things that are going on in the team. So one of the other fun things about SysOps, even though we're a cross-functional team, we actually we act ourselves as a team, and we actually have offsites. So one thing that the team did last year before I joined, and I'm really upset that I missed this because I heard about it and I was like, this is the most amazing thing ever, is there's actually a ranch in Yorkville, California, where this team actually went to go yak shaving. So they didn't actually like bust out any shears and like shave yaks. It was more kind of like yak trimming. But one of our engineers called this rancher and was like, hey, do you have yaks? And can we come shave them? And they're like, sure. So it was a really great offsite. I've heard many amazing stories from that day. I'm sad that I missed it. And just so you know, there were no yaks that were harmed during this yak shaving offsite. Everything was very respectful. And we also do great things where we give everybody great hoodies. I was actually going to wear it up here today, but it's been really, really hot in Portland, and I didn't want to sweat any more than I already am. So, past, present, and future of SysOps. The initial incarnation of SysOps was all about remediation. It was folks that were actually fixing all of the problems. And our stack was simpler then, and it was really easy to kind of drill down on an issue and figure out what it was. These days, we've become more of like a triage unit. So alert will come in, and if you feel experienced enough to go ahead and solve that problem, you can go ahead and fix it. Otherwise, you're looking for the best person on another team to kind of figure out the root cause and figure out what's going wrong. And then health. One of the things that we're looking for in the future is that we have all these great people, well over 50 of them, that have volunteered to be on call. How is this affecting them? How is this affecting them in their daily jobs? So one thing that I've been casually working on since a little bit last year, I originally hoped to open source it here at Monitorama today, but priority shifted and I didn't have a chance to fully work on it. But I wanted to kind of show you guys kind of what I'm thinking about in terms of on-call health and how we're doing things. Catherine actually had a great presentation earlier today where she was talking about all the great stuff that they've done at Etsy, and I'm beginning to think about a lot of those same things. So on-call health, how are our weekly alerting trends going in the right direction? And do we really understand the impact on our on-call engineers? Are there any false positives that are constantly leaking out that we need to tune? And then are there teams that need better on-call training? And are the rotations and notifications for particular people appropriate? This originally started as a project to make sure that every rotation had an actual schedule associated to it, and not just not just one person that was constantly on call for a particular service, and also making sure that every engineer set up something other than just email, right? So you can set up PagerDuty with just email, but you actually need to have it either send a push notification or SMS you or call you to be effective. So it was kind of like our validation there. So I started building out a simple UI. I'm not a very great UI designer, but I'll take you through some of the screens. So looking at our weekly incident totals over the year, this shouldn't be going up, but we actually have more alerts being created every week that teams are working on that end up driving it up a little bit before it becomes tuned. We're measuring our mean time to acknowledge, our mean time to resolve, the count of the last week's weekly incidents, our weekly average, and then the year-to-date amount of total incidents. Next thing we can look at is the daily heat map. So for whatever reason, Tuesdays are a really bad day for us in terms of alerts. You would think that Mondays or Sundays or Mondays would be bad for us because going into the summer and through November, every Sunday is our biggest day ever, and then every Monday is our biggest day ever in terms of throughput. But somehow on Tuesdays is when we have most of our issues. And then we track incident counts by service, which teams are dealing with the most incidents. And then we look at total user notifications. I actually changed all the names on here because I didn't want to show anybody from Airbnb in particular here and how much they're getting alerted. But we track the total amount of alerts that they received over that week, and then how many came during non-business hours or nighttime, right? And this is actually a very, very important metric to really understand how much alerts are really affecting our on-call engineers. So you can see Jason, for that week, had 48 total alerts, 40 of them which were at night. And you can drill down a little bit further on that and see the heat map for Jason and what particular alerts and which particular nights were really bad for him. And then going back to false positive incident counts and noise candidates, these are alerts that resolve themselves within 5 minutes with no user interaction. Someone can acknowledge them, but if they automatically resolve, then that's probably something that we should look at. We should either tune it or make sure that it's not paging at all. And then incidents with escalation timeout. So this is for identifying areas where we need to improve our on-call training, where incidents are going through an entire rotation, an entire loop before someone actually responds. So one thing that I would actually love, we have one of our core values at Airbnb is being a host. It's all about what you do for everybody, what you do for other people, and what you do for the folks on your team. And most importantly, I think one of the big takeaways for me here at Monitorama is that it's really all about people. Right? A lot of the technology solutions out there can really augment our ability to do on-call and to understand our systems really well. But the most valuable asset every single company has here is its people. So making sure that they can do things effectively and they're not constantly interrupted and they can lead great lives is very, very important to the success of your company. So tracking things like sleep, some weeks can be really, really tough. And is it okay within your culture for someone to tap out, right? If after Tuesday on a week-long rotation, you haven't slept for 2 days, are there any signals within your tooling and your application to let your manager know automatically without you having to say something that you've had a tough time and that it should be someone else's turn to jump on call for that rest of that week? These are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about that I think we should all be thinking about in terms of measuring our on-call health. Just your general life. And this doesn't really apply to just people that are on call. Like we have a few engineers at Airbnb who are always around helping out with incidents. They might not be on call, but they feel kind of like obligated to be there and spend time helping others deal with incidents. And that kind of stuff should be tracked and measured so that we can have conversations with them to make sure that they don't feel obligated to have to continually do this, that everything will be okay if they happen to take a step away. So one of the things that we started looking at was building something that looks at our incidents channel in Slack and measures the amount of time that folks spend in there and the amount of time they spend in there in active conversations. And it's been a really good indicator for things that we need to look at to make sure that the people are spending time away from Slack and away from incidents and leading effective lives. And then recognition. Are you appropriately recognizing on-call work and work to eliminate tough on-calls, right? So if those false positives are constantly happening, or if there's a constant issue that's bringing down the system, are we not just simply dealing with it by throwing hours of it on it by being on call? Are we actually getting to the root cause and figuring out the best way to solve those problems, and are we rewarding that properly? So one of the, going back to Harmony and talking about that a little bit, I think that this is something that I would love to work on with many of the people in this room. I know a lot of people probably have thoughts about great ways to use a lot of the data that you can consume from the PagerDuty APIs to build effective tooling around how we think about health and how we think about on-call management. And if you'd love to talk to me about after this, I would love to talk to you. But I think if you feel like you've leveled up from being here in terms of like learning about your tooling and your knowledge around metrics and how to collect those things and how to build monitoring systems around that, I hope that everybody will go back to their respective companies and be a host and really think about the health of your employees and the health of the folks that are on call. Otherwise, I'm going to send the bear shark after you. So that's it. That's all I've got for today. Thank you guys for your time.